What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Daily Groomer podcast. I'm your host, Alex Martin, and today I have on the man with a van, Chris Hanvey. So, Chris
Yes.
graduated from Clemson University, with a bachelor's in computer engineering. Yes, that's two words that are very technical and very difficult, and probably lend to why the vans are world class. Chris has been working with Hanvey since he was a kid, old enough to earn an allowance. And most recently, for those of y'all that went out to Hershey, he was the lead engineer on their big new release, the Big Van Energy, the BVE conversion. That's 100% all electric, no generator, no propane, and no idle. So I brought him on today to obviously talk not only all about this new BVE conversion, but also just about how important a proper van is for you guys as mobile groomers, where we see the world of mobile grooming going, and maybe how technology plays a part in all of this. So, Chris, thanks so much for coming on today, man. I mean, I know you were building vans since you were old enough to earn an allowance, but
Maybe not the vehicles themselves, but the company Hanvey Engineering was founded by my parents. And ever since like early 2000s, late 1990s, I've been doing odd jobs for the company to help push things forward. We really didn't start doing mobile until like mid 2000s. So the mobile space came in later.
And obviously you say mid 2000s, like that's late, but for all of us, I mean, we're like, dang, man, I mean, I didn't even hear about mobile pre-COVID. Talk to me a little bit about, do you remember what it was like when you guys decided to start doing mobile and maybe like start leaning into that category?
Yeah, mobile we always had a shoe in with mobile because everything you do in mobile, you need product, you need equipment, and everything inside of there is basically a salon on wheels. We were at that point basically doing every piece of equipment you could need in a grooming salon. So it was a natural fit to put it in a vehicle and get a full salon on wheels. So when we initially started off, we were doing like anyone else would, just throw a generator in the back of it for your power and call it a day. It didn't take us long to realize that generators just were a complete nightmare and headache, and we dumped them within the first year of starting to go mobile. Ever since, we've been battery powered systems and relying on the alternator for charging and air conditioning system. So we've been more or less generator free since early 2000s, mid 2000s.
And I know you go to sleep thinking about being generator free, but and all of us do too, obviously. But for those of us out there that maybe don't, let's walk that 3 steps back. Why is it obvious that generators are a bad solution or a worse solution than battery powered?
Well, the biggest reason why is downtime, but not only scheduled downtime, but unscheduled downtime. Random mechanical failures can cause you to end your day early and take multiple weeks sometimes to get parts to replace. That downtime is costly and inconvenient for you and your customers. It's also costly. So there's a lot of red flags there that we just, after the first few months of dealing with it and having people calling us up almost every other week about something with their generator, Curtis just was like, no, I'm not dealing with this. And unless we can figure out another way that is generator free to get rid of this headache, I don't want to deal with it. And that's when he figured out how to make battery power and inverters work in a mobile setting.
Got it. So you guys figured this out a while ago, but obviously there's still people today using generators.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me why. I mean, like layman's terms, is that because it's easiest, it's most accessible, it's cheapest?
It is pretty cheap initially, and not so much in the long run. And battery bank inverter system has higher upfront costs, but it basically pays for itself over time. The other things is the battery systems and inverter systems were limited in power. Initially, it was only powerful enough for about 3,000 watts, which is just enough to run your air conditioner or your dryer and a couple other small pieces of equipment, but not both combined. That is one of the reasons why we went to an engine-driven air conditioning system. Not only did it allow us to stick with a battery and inverter system to run all your other devices like your clipper vacuum, your dryers, your tables, and anything else you'd plug into your outlets, But that removed the air conditioner as a load, so we could just not have to worry about that.
Okay, so the big, load bearing, issue was the air conditioner, and obviously if
Yes.
you're in a hot area, that becomes a problem. Maybe not if you're not in a hot area, but I can imagine. I mean, those vans get hot no matter where you are. Okay, so if you're able to move off the air conditioner, then the battery becomes a lot more feasible. What are some of the downsides with like a battery operated model? Like, why would I want to consider a generator versus a battery?
Yeah. Initially speaking, until the last couple of years where lithium has really innovated and captured more or less the entire battery powered market, the only true options were lead powered systems, lead acid flooded cells, or AGMs, glass mat. And these technologies, while functional, did not really have longevity. If you never touch them, would last you probably 2 years before you start having power issues where it's just like your smartphone, they don't last the entire day.
Sure.
So you have to do extra maintenance or charge them up more regularly. It's just battery fade. That would happen relatively quickly. So you do have the additional costs of replacing and or maintaining them, just like a generator would. But as I mentioned, it wasn't until the last couple of years where lithium come on the market that all that went out the window. You basically get a battery that can last you 15 to 20 years with no maintenance. And
Crazy.
that basically, yeah, exactly. That fits into exactly what we've been trying to push this whole time with getting away from the generators. There's less maintenance than a generator for lead acid, but lithium is maintenance free. You basically never have to touch it again.
Is it more expensive?
Oh, the upfront cost is even more expensive than lead acid. So again, it jacks up the upfront cost, but again, it pays for itself long term.
Right. I mean, if you can make it last 15, 20 years versus just the 2 years, you can probably justify that expensive upfront cost right away.
Exactly. So it doesn't take but 2 battery swaps in a standard conversion, lead acid, for the upgrade cost, the extra cost for the lithium to pay for itself, which typically would happen between year 4 and year 8, depending on how well you maintain them and or how hard you use them.
Love it. Okay, so that big unlock was lithium. Is that when you guys started thinking about this big van energy conversion?
That was one of the leading factors. The other was power density. We needed enough power in the back to actually last an entire workday. Lithium, while great at being small, it did not have enough power to last the entire day until literally the last year, maybe 2, that we were able to get the density we needed in the back of the van to allow us the capacity to go a 10-hour workday. The BVE actually has 30 kilowatt hours of battery capacity. To put that in perspective, it is 4 times our standard conversion battery at 7.5, but it's also almost half of a Tesla in terms of amount of power. So it is a lot of power in the back of the thing, but also not only density, but safety. The chemistry in these lithium batteries, not like your standard Tesla car batteries, which is a completely different chemistry. That is, during a thermal runaway, they combust, and it's basically a huge fire hazard. The chemistry inside these batteries are lithium iron phosphate instead of nickel manganese cadmium, just 2 different chemistries. And the iron phosphate, it smolders when if you were to puncture it, but it won't combust. So you don't have to worry about a giant explosion hazard if you were in the middle of a wreck or whatever. They will get hot and smolder, but they won't like combust into huge flames.
Okay, well, that sounds good. We don't like combust into huge flames. You said a lot of fancy words there, but I did take away that basically I could run all of my things, my dryers, my blowers, my clippers, everything, maybe my electric table for all day and not worry about that battery system dying, not worrying about having to go recharge, nothing like that. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And I know you drew the comparison with Tesla. Now, one thing that comes to mind is these are not fully electric vans. They're just electric, kits almost that just run my back.
Correct. The conversion itself is fully electric. The vehicle itself is not yet. The Sprinter is coming on the market next year. And as soon as we can get our hands on it and build on it, we will. And this was just our first step because the e-Sprinter has no engine for us to tap for an additional alternator power or air conditioner compressor or anything like that. So we had to be fully self-sufficient to allow us to be able to build in the e-sprinter, but we're now able to build this on both the e-sprinter and the standard sprinter and not have to worry about that.
Got it. Wow. Okay. That's I can't even imagine a world when that e-sprinter comes out that the entire, like, you're not really ever paying for gas then. I mean,
no. Yeah, at that point it would be 100% electric, both vehicle and conversion.
That's wild. That's wild. Okay, so with these new lithium kits, I know that the Big Van Energy, you guys just announced it in Hershey. Have you guys seen any, testing or any numbers related to, that maintenance impact? Because I'm just going through my head as a mobile owner out there, you have to factor in some unknown cost of maintenance. Now, it's going to happen to your generator, it's probably going to happen to your van, but it's a big line item, on a yearly basis in terms of expenses. I'm curious, given I know this is relatively newish for you guys, but do you have any expectations on how much it might lower that maintenance bill or, even just that maintenance headache?
Compared to our standard conversion, it's not a lot. The biggest thing that it does do is reduce the scheduled and unscheduled downtime for maintenance issues. So it makes it more or less headache free.
So I know I'm not going to lose an afternoon of clients because the generator stopped working.
Or the battery faded or whatever have you. So, yeah.
Okay. Totally makes sense. Logistically, again, dumb question. So when I take this home at night, do I have to plug it in? Do I have to charge it?
Yes, this one is basically like a plug-in EV, where at the end of the day, you take it home, you plug it in, and you have a full charge in the morning.
Okay. And talk to me, because given your position and like what you guys see at Hanvey, obviously you guys sell van and van conversion kits to not only mom and pops, but to franchise models and to bigger chains, etc. Where does the sell maybe differ? Like, what's the big pro for, let's call it a mom and pop, versus a franchise model that might look to deploy 5 to 10 of these things?
Well, the biggest difference between the BVE and the standard conversion for us really is what you just mentioned, the plug-in. There are some people out there who live in condos, typically those mom and pops, who just have one van and they don't have a place to plug it in overnight. Those people can't, until the public infrastructure is built out, they really don't have a way of being able to plug in. They really have to stick with the standard conversion, where they rely on the engine for a lot more of their power needs. Whereas if you have the ability to plug in, it more or less makes total sense to go ahead and move over, just like an EV today. If you have a garage at your house and you can plug in your car, it just makes sense economically to do so.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can definitely see that if I have the option to plug in, it would make 10 times more sense, for me to go with the BVE conversion. But you're right, there's a natural constraint just from the charging infrastructure that, seems to even prevent, Tesla from taking over, right? It's until that charging infrastructure is there, it doesn't make sense for some people
exactly
to go that model. Given what you see at Hanvey, I mean, let's zoom out of, EV infrastructure here for a second. Talk to me just like high level. What are you seeing in the space between, mom and pop growth within mobile, franchise growth within mobile, et cetera?
Franchisees and larger businesses, not just franchisees, but even mom and pops going into more than 3 vehicles. At that point, we kind of consider them the fleet. Okay. Fleet growth in general has exploded post-COVID. COVID really pushed the idea of mobile services into the public space that everyone knows it's a thing. And at that point, we really saw a lot of growth for the 4+ van market.
Are you seeing a lot of that growth come from net new mobile groomers, meaning they were previously not in grooming? Or are you seeing a lot of that growth come from brick and mortar groomers that are jumping into the mobile space?
We don't specifically in our internals tell the difference between currently grooming versus not grooming. We look at mobile versus not mobile, but in general, probably 3/4 of our sales now are going to currently mobile businesses and not new to mobile businesses.
Okay, so maybe like their expansion, right? Their businesses, like you said, that are
Exactly.
maybe going from 2 or 3 to build a fleet, or they already have a fleet and they're just continually adding on.
Yeah.
I know you only see from the van side, but I'm just curious, given your experience in the mobile space. Um, you mentioned that it's still just exploding since COVID. Do you see it slowing down anytime soon, or from your perspective, is there still legs here?
This year, due to the election year, historically speaking, election years are our rough years in terms of production. It seems like almost every other election year, we're having to slow down and or almost stall out because of the reduction in volume and demand. So this year was our slow year, but even so, we're getting pretty darn close to hitting the 200 unit mark. I think this year we're probably in closer to about 180. But peak COVID, we were doing 250 before the supply chain really crunched us down to 200 again.
Wow.
So,
And that's 250 units delivered,
yeah,
all time throughout that year.
yeah.
Wow, that's remarkable. So you like the supply chain crunching. I'm thinking right now, like there's people that have mentioned wanting mobiles from you guys or from others, saying, "Hey, it's just hard to get. Like there's a wait list or whatever."
Oh, yeah.
Is that because of the supply chain? That you guys are still
It's
maintaining kind of that wait list, or is it more on you guys that, hey, we
it's
can
the
only
supply chain demand and the ability to build. It's all three really coupled combined. The supply chain, depending on the year or whatever have you, can be our limiting factor. Sometimes it is supply, sometimes it's demand, but usually it's a combination of all three.
And let's get into the weeds here because I'm just curious on the supply chain of the of the 3 pillars of the supply chain pillar. What is the crunch to get? Is it the lithium? Is it actually getting the vans? That's the hard part. What is usually the choke point?
Yeah. Last year it was the vehicle itself.
Okay.
Because the supply chain crunches in the vehicles, they didn't have the chips they needed to build them. So the vehicle itself was our primary limiting factor. This year, with the slowdown in the economy, vehicles are not the choke point. They're actually trying to do all the incentives they can to push the volume that they built, expecting things to stay the same, but the demand has most definitely fallen off. So supply in the vehicles is very high. So this year, as you said, just due to the slowing economy and everything, it's primarily demand. But at the same time, we do have a little bit of restrictions in the supply chain that we have to iron through. And it's not actually the lithium or the power system. It's actually around the wood and getting the panels themselves, the walls, manufactured.
The interior build out.
Yeah.
Got it. Wow. Okay. Super interesting. I'm curious as you talk about, the different pieces of this puzzle, what does the typical build out look like? You guys acquire the van and then walk me through you guys acquiring the van towards me getting it fully delivered BV style.
Yeah. Typically there is multiple weeks between us getting the van on our lot and actually being able to build it, quality control it, test it, and then get you out here to either take delivery of it or ship it out to you. Right now it's 6 to 12 weeks, just depending. But typically we get the vehicle, it's a couple weeks before we can fit it into our schedule to get it inside the facility, do some prep work and put it down the assembly line. Once it reaches the assembly line, it's usually just a week or two before it's off the assembly line and goes to final QC and detailing, and then another week or two later, ready for delivery.
Okay, so 6 to 12 weeks. Wow. So obviously you guys are selling brand new mobile build outs, but we know not everyone in the space has the opportunity or even wants to do that option of new build outs. Again, I want you to zoom out for a second, just given your expertise. If there was someone listening that wanted to do a used build out, do you have a recommended strategy or even just some benchmarks of like, hey, a new build out van, ours or another company's, will cost you around X. If you go the used route, you could probably get a van for, X, and then I would recommend a build out budget of Y. Do you have any of those, good benchmarks for us?
Not really for a used build out, but just the used market in general, of already pre-built vans being sold years later. The biggest things you want to look for when buying a used conversion is make sure the batteries are relatively new, especially if it's older than 4 years. If the battery bank itself is older than 4 years, expect to be replacing it soon. It's basically reached its end of life. While it's not dead, they fade quickly. So I would budget that in as well. A second thing is just making sure everything works, turning on the lights, making sure everything works, pumps, everything's functional. A lot of times over the years of people owning it, they just tend to haphazardly patch things and just get by without that because they don't technically need it. But those are things that you need to keep an eye on because we've seen some really crazy things when people buy used. Sometimes they even get fully gutted before they get sold. So also feel free to call us. We'll be glad to help walk you through and or get some pictures or something to help you figure that out. It's something we're here to help you with.
I can imagine you guys have seen some crazy add-ons or, modifications over time after driving something off your guys' lot. Do any of those stories come to mind on, something crazy that's been added or removed from a build out that you're just like taken aback by?
Yeah, the most recent one was they basically gutted all the equipment. So no tanks, no tub, no table, no batteries, but they left the inverter. Some outlets were taken out. It was just more or less completely gutted to the point to where they had to more or less rebuild the thing. It was just an empty shell. I don't understand why someone would necessarily want to buy that, but it was something we've seen, and they came here and they were like not expecting the bill. They saw to get everything put back in it. So they weren't able to leave happy with all the things. They had to get what they needed and then just make it work.
Got it. That makes sense. Do you have any good maybe questions to consider when thinking about buying new versus used?
The biggest question right now in my mind is, can you plug in, or can you figure out a way to plug in overnight specifically?
Okay.
Overnight plug-in has a lot of benefits, especially with the new conversion, the BVE, that you cannot get otherwise, especially in the northern climates where you have to deal with the winter. Plugging in overnight is basically keeps your space warm, keeps your water warm, keeps things from freezing. It's great. If you can't do that, figure out how can I get around winter months and especially those winter nights without keeping things from freezing. You can work it out, but figuring out those details is another important step. And the third, just planning and figuring out budgeting and the financing part. While a lot of the times you can get financed, not necessarily through us, but through our vendors, they may not have terms you necessarily would like. So looking to see if there's any alternative ways of financing through like your local bank, credit union, and other things like that. You're not locked into just the financing options we provide. You can do your own homework in that regard to try and find out other ways of getting either the vehicle or conversion or both financed.
Love it. Love it. On that kind of budgeting note, you sparked a question in my head around scheduled maintenance, right? Do you have any, we don't even have to go numbers here, but just like what to expect for a new mobile owner when it comes to scheduled maintenance, whether it's, your guys' van or somebody else's, just general expectations when it comes to, hey, once a month, you're going to have to expect a weekend off to go take it here, whatever, right? Just give me some guidelines.
Yeah. The three things there for scheduled maintenance is, do you have a generator? Generators have their own hours of runtime before they need the oil changes and other regular maintenance routines based upon the hours. So you got to keep up with that. If you're dealing with a battery inverter system, keeping up with those maintenance schedules is also important. The lithium maintenance schedule, as I mentioned, is basically gone away, so you don't have to worry about that. But another thing a lot of people don't really think of in terms of maintenance is cleanliness. Mobile grooming is naturally a dirty thing, and that hair and dander buildup on equipment can cause early premature failures. So not only keeping the van clean, but hair-free to the best of your ability will help increase the longevity of your equipment. So those are really the three things that you need to keep in mind and keep up on, so that you can, the vehicle itself, you have to keep the vehicle regular maintenance up, annual or whenever you get the mileage, keep up with those. But usually these things are duly documented, and you just got to follow the routines presented to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, some of it's just like, hey, common sense. Like, you have, expensive material, keep it clean or it's going to degrade quicker. And some of it is you just want to make sure you get in front of, like, if you have a generator, make sure you get in front of the oil change schedule. Otherwise, that'll cause you a lot of unscheduled maintenance, right?
Yes, unscheduled downtime is a lot more costly than unscheduled, not only in terms of the physical dollar amount, but also the lost revenue and or the headache, just the frustration of rebooking, rescheduling clients, all the other stuff. So being able to schedule downtime is extremely important in that regard.
What would you say is the number one thing that fleet mobile operators care about when it comes to buying a van? And let me tell you why I ask that is, I feel like as independent mobile operators out there, whether they're mom and pop or maybe they have a couple vans, there's almost like this whole other world of people that are like fleet operators buying, 20, 30 vans from you guys. Maybe they see something that, I'm going to generalize, that we don't. What do they care about when it comes to buying a van, and what kind of questions are they asking you guys about? What's top of mind for them?
Really for them, it's the maintenance aspect and the downtime and those additional costs. It's part of their bottom line. So they're a little more focused on it than your mom and pop would be. And second is for them would be the actual groomers themselves. Making sure education and training is important, because at that point for a fleet, your groomer is also another asset. You got a bad groomer that doesn't do well, that breaks your equipment all the time because they're not following procedures or protocols. That's very costly to your bottom line than an educated groomer who takes care of their equipment and keeps things clean. So really, those are the two primary things that they would be focused on, more so than your mom and pop, where they would just make it work and move on.
And when you say like training and stuff like that, is that just kind of like the basics of, hey, make sure that, you turn off your blower and dryer when like it's nighttime, make sure you unplug this thing, make sure you do that. Is that kind of the basics there?
Pretty much that, and more or less the general routine of how to properly wash, bathe, dry,
Sure.
prep, just your general grooming, but also how to use the equipment, what the benefits of using the equipment are. One thing that we've found more interesting than I thought it would be is groomers in our grooming vans who use less equipment that we provide to them for free, that comes standard into the conversion, the more troubles they have. So if they decide not to use the clipper vacuum system, they're usually okay. But if they decide not to use the bathing system, they're typically more often a call. And if they're really just doing everything their own way and using their own dryers on top of not using the bather, they have a lot of issues. So we do build our conversion to be synergistic with itself.
Yeah.
And the more you step away and just plug in whatever you want to, the more likely you are to have issues.
Wow, that's super interesting. Have you ever seen that that movie about Ray Kroc in McDonald's?
I don't think so.
Okay, I forget what it's called. It's an excellent movie, but he says something very similar, that when he took over McDonald's, Ray Kroc is on record as the founder of McDonald's, but he bought in and they had a few restaurants, etc. But the movie details that one of the first things he did when he took it over is every location, or however many they had, handful, were doing things differently. And so he went in and he like reorganized all of the equipment the exact same way in all of the locations. And then he taught how to use it like synergistically, right? You use the fryer and then you turn around and use this and you turn around and use that, right? It just kind of reminded me of what you said about like, there is this kind of magic to the rhythm and the dance of using everything synergistically to avoid problems.
Yes.
I like how you guys did that. And maybe, and honestly, one question that sparked that we should have covered in the beginning, but I was too eager to get into it. What does your guys' typical build out include? I know you guys you mentioned the bathing system. What does that look like? What does
Yes.
things look like?
Everything that you would use in your normal grooming session comes standard with our conversion. That includes the clipper vacuum system, which doubles as your shop vac, so you can clean up the space and or clipper the dog at this, not necessarily at the same time, but through the same piece of equipment. Your bathing system is a recycling bathing system that recirculates the water in the tub to wash the dog. You rinse that away, you drain it away, you put new water in, and you can do repeat if needed. So it's just like your washing machine or dryer, where you just reuse that soapy water to remove all the dirt, and you flush it away, you rinse it away, and then if you need to do a second wash, you can. We also provide you dryers. These are energy efficient dryers that were designed specifically for our conversion. Unlike the K9 2, which is more or less a 18 to 20 amp dryer, these are about 13 amp dryers. It's better for the inverter and the longevity of the batteries to not have that really high power draw. So those come as well. We also provide everything you would need for like hot water, water tanks, wastewater tanks, so you can store the water if your HOA or wherever you local or regional laws say you can do. So pretty much all that is provided standard. Really the only options we provide or give you are like extended work days, where if you want a larger battery pack, you can get that. Additional storage, you can opt in for those types of thing. Backup camera, little things like that. But the actual grooming equipment and everything else that you would need, including the lip system, the electric table, all that stuff comes standard.
Nice. Okay, love it. Has it always come standard, or how is
Yes.
it build out, evolved?
Yeah, Hanvey has always been giving you those things that you need to do the groom standard. Those have never been optionals.
Nice. Okay, that makes it a lot easier. Has the equipment and your guys' choice of maybe certain, maybe, I don't know, things come to mind like power or stuff like that, has it ever changed, or has it always been kind of, hey, this is the same power that we were building out in the shop vac 20 years ago, right?
It wasn't until post-COVID where the supply chain started having manufacturing issues that we really started looking at upgrading the power system. I mean, we're keeping an eye on lithium technology in general, because we knew it would be the forerunner into making us the next big thing, which is big van energy. But it wasn't until like post-COVID with the manufacturing defects that we started looking at upgrading the entire power system as a whole, and not just the battery power itself. It was last year, I think, that we moved away from that original inverter company to a new company for the inverter power system called Victron. It's very highly popular, and they're all over the US. And we're basically synergistic now into that ecosystem, to where anything dealing with power is in that ecosystem. You can connect to it with your Bluetooth on your phone and see it, or if you step up to the BVE, it's even online in the cloud, so you can see all that stuff.
That's nuts. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the past and where Hanvey's been able to innovate and come. I'm curious about the future. I know you mentioned it in the beginning of the pod that you guys are looking to go over to that e-Sprinter as soon as it's available. But I guess a huge question mark remains to me. There's still people today using, like I said, generators.
Yep.
Do you see a world where everyone switches over to electric grooming vans, or it will kind of remain like a bifurcated?
No, with the laws being enacted in California, generators will basically be banned. So you will have to be moving away from generators. And in my opinion, that was the biggest push to make Wagon Tails release their smart power system. I don't think if they didn't get that kick in the pants, they would ever have moved away from generators. So with that said, battery technology and inverter technology has only exploded since. And with the growth there, I really do see that all electric conversion will become the standard norm for almost anyone looking, even DIY, in the near term, probably the next 5 years, definitely within the next 10.
Dude, I'm looking forward to that. That will be awesome. I feel like there's got to be a quietness aspect to completely battery powered systems too, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess obviously when you're driving, the battery powered van will come into play and be quiet, but that's not totally, a game changer or not, because you're not grooming while driving. But I do like that your guys' line with the BVE is no generator, no propane, no idle. That's awesome. So let's say I'm listening to this and I decide, hey, I want to get this BVE or check it out. What's the wait list look like for it? I mean, how long would it be until I'm able to get one?
Yeah, right now we're pre-order, and we will be pre-order probably, as I said, until Q1 of next year. Once we validate and finalize the design through winter testing, is when we'll finally open up the order books. We will initially go through every pre-order first, and once pre-orders have been fulfilled, we will then open up to standard orders at that point. So I'm personally not anticipating a normal orders until either the end of next year or early 2026 for just being able to standard buy one. So,
all right. So if you want that BVE, you better get on that list. All right.
Yeah. If you want the BVE next year, you need to be on that pre-order list.
Okay, cool, man. And outside of the BVE, I mean, the regular conversion kits from generator powered to your guys' battery powered system, those are still available, right?
We technically don't do any kits to convert a generator system to an all-electric system. I do know there are people out there that do that, but that's not something we do. But our standard conversion isn't going away. As I mentioned before, the standard conversion is still needed for those who technically can't plug in as frequently. Right. There is workarounds there. We do strongly recommend that you do plug in. It just helps with the longevity of your equipment and your battery to regularly plug in. But if you cannot, there is some workarounds there, but in the BVE there isn't. That thing must be plugged in or else you won't work the next day without plugging in. So
make sure you got a plug then.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome, man. Well, I will have to definitely get some eyes on that BVE. I'm bummed I missed it at Hershey, but I'll have to go check that out because that just sounds too cool, man. Too cool that you're able to actually do that. It almost sounds like unreal. Like it shouldn't exist yet, right? But
yeah,
I guess it's here and the future's coming.
Yes, it's most definitely here.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, man, and giving us this kind of technical briefer into the world of vans and the world of Hanvey. I want to give people a chance to find you if they want to. What's the best place for them to find some more information, reach out?
Yeah. Our website, hanvey.com, is probably the easiest way. There's a contact us page, or you can email us at info@hanvey.com. Those are two easy ways to learn more and to reach out.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Chris. I'll let you know if anyone contacts me to get a hold of you directly. Appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
And that's the pod.